our movement, Town Washington.
Thanks, brother. Good afternoon. So how many are a little bit familiar with what I teach or what I do or whatever? And how many are just here because I'm the next speaker? Okay. And how many are here because of some kind of morbid curiosity of whatever this, there might be a train wreck or something. Okay. So I want to start with, I need you all to stand up. So I need those two guys right over there to stand up. If you don't stand up, I'll have to ask you to leave. Okay, sit down. The gentleman that's walking out, I'd like you to come back. But I want to demonstrate something, and that gentleman that's walking out is the prime example of somebody who understands who he is. The rest of you stood up, and the reason why, and I want you to think about what happened to you, because you all had a different experience with that, but the catalyst of what made you all stand up was because I'm standing on this stage and I have a microphone. Therefore, there was an illusion of authority. Now, some of you stood up just because I said so, and then others of you stood up because others stood up. Then the two gentlemen over there, I called them out. One of them stood up because now he's called out. The other guy, he refused, and I threatened him to be removed. Now, that wasn't real. He actually got up and left on his own accord. That's the difference between who understands who they are and who's just kind of following something. So I want you to be self-aware of what happened to you in that little demonstration. This is for you so you can understand who you are and possibly who you are not or who you think you are. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of who I am. I'm just a normal guy, and I went through an extraordinary experience. So this thing's called the red pill. And in the movie, most of you are probably familiar with it, Neo took the red pill and then he was on the ship. So they got him out of the Matrix. And that's what is synonymous with truth. The red pill is the truth. But after they rehabilitated him, he actually went through another process of a higher truth. He couldn't do it. So we're all in some kind of stage like that, and there's going to be more truth. And some of it will be hard to assimilate. So I want you to be aware of that. I want you to be self-aware. There was a famous man who once said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Now, some of you know who that is right away, and others of you don't, and that's okay. But this man had said a lot of things, and they were very simple, but there was a lot of profound meaning if you thought about what he said, like if you actually sort of meditated on it. So I want you to think about that as you go through life, but I'll just sort of give you a little rundown. So number one, it was a statement. It wasn't if you find the truth will set you free. Another part of it was the set you free, which means you're not free. And you may not know that, because we don't even know what freedom is. We have no point of view. So I'll just give you what happened to me. a short run of it, I don't have enough time to explain everything, but I ended up, I was just a normal guy, played a little bit of sports, I played music, had a mortgage, had 5 kids, married, went to church, pretty normal, just working guy. Well, I ended up in a divorce. And it was shocking for me, but I went on a website, and what it said was, if you're on this site, this is what just happened to you. And then there was a list of stuff. Certain TV programs were watched, your wife was a certain age, certain magazines, she started exercising, like it was eerie. That was my first introduction to there's something going on. And so, that was the beginning. So through the process of a divorce, the first thing you do, because we were told to, is you get a lawyer, right? So that's what you do, you go and get a lawyer, and then you go to this place called the court where there's supposed to be this justice. That was my impression. When I got in there, it wasn't like that. There was something else going on, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was definitely something, there was another agenda going on in there. I know what it is now, but at the time I didn't. I was expecting, they're going to listen to people, but they weren't listening to me, and they weren't listening to my wife at the time. And they just wanted to get through this process because there was something else. You could just feel there's something else we need to do, and we need to get you through this so that we can carry on with what we're doing. So long story short, I ended up in what's called the child support thing. And so there was hearings, and I was summoned to a court. So this is the first time I'm really having to appear. And by this time I'm starting to search a little bit because of what I saw on this website, that there's something going on. And so I ended up in there, and I went to one of the first sort of gurus, and some of you may know who he is, but I won't mention it. And what happened was, he represented me on my first appearance, got arrested in the courtroom, and it caused a large kerfuffle. Subsequent to that, the judge found out who he was and had to apologize, etc. And again, it was just kind of cut to the chase. Within a couple of days, I had what you would know as a SWAT team at my house. This is over child support. So they can get quite aggressive. My brother happened to be at my house. He didn't visit very often. He happened to be there that night, and they mistook him for me and almost beat him to death. It took him 7 years. They gave him a big settlement, but it took him 7 years to fight this because the police just kind of protected themselves. So again, just sort of moving through my story, I ended up learning more from different people, and I tried everything. Like I tried, the capitalized name. I'm not the name. I'm a flesh and blood. I'm a sovereign. I tried all that stuff. None of it worked. I just kept getting arrested, and spending time in jail, being pulled over, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But a couple of things happened, and a couple of judges, because I was starting to ask questions about what's going on in here, I got encouraged, actually. One judge in particular said, "You seem sophisticated, Mr. Washington, keep going." And I didn't know that I was going anywhere, right? But she knew what the questions that I was asking was going to get to the bottom of what's going on. And sure enough, now I can see, in hindsight I can see it, but at the time I didn't know what that even meant. A couple other things happened. Once I started learning started reading Acts and everything, and I got quite good at it. I would spend a lot of time, I was working during the day, and I would stay up till 2 and 3 in the morning, just reading Acts and reading Acts and reading Acts and deciphering them and reading them backwards and looking up all the words. I studied and I studied like a lawyer. And I would come up with cases based on Acts. And the judges would look like, whoa, but they would rule against me. So you can see on the face, yeah, you won. Like, you're correct, you actually have the better argument, but you lose. And this happened over and over and over, and I'm like, well, what's going on? Like, where am I? What's happened here? So I ended up going to a seminar on commerce. And while I was in that commerce, so this is, this is a couple of years of going to court at least once a month and arguing with these people. And I got epiphany after epiphany after epiphany because I had already experienced something, and now I could see why these things were happening. And it came down to that there is another jurisdiction that we didn't understand, that I didn't understand was there, and most of you probably don't know it's there as well. They were operating in a jurisdiction that is kind of hidden. But once you see it, everything made sense to me. So I just started experimenting. So everything that I did was, I went through all the different gurus, I tried all the different things, and this was just the next thing. I didn't know it was the big answer, but it looked like, I'll try this. So my first case after I learned how to use commercial instruments, I put a bond on the case. It was for driving without insurance. By this time, I had read the act and did some things that, according to the act, I was allowed to do. And they didn't honor it, so I just kept driving anyway. So I go to the courthouse, and because of the ritualistic thing of standing up when the judge comes in, we used to wait outside because we got in trouble with the sheriffs for not standing when the judge came in, just like that guy right there. So by this time, the guy in the black suit sitting at the front was just a guy to me. I was starting to lose my fear. And at that point, they called the case inside the courtroom, and then I didn't show up, so then they page outside in the hallway. So as we're going through the door, the judge ran out of the room. So we went, okay, that is working, because up to this point, nothing was working. So we tried to figure out, why did that work? Like, we want to learn more, because this was just an experiment. Let's try this, see what happens. Judge runs out of the room. Okay, we need to find out what's going on with this, right? So that my whole experience was like that. It was a lot of trial and error, and then sticking with what worked, do it again, see if you get the same result, then it becomes actual reality. This is happening, whether I fully understand it or not. It becomes the truth. And it becomes the truth no matter what anybody says. Because then the judges tried to catch up, and then they tried to say to me, there's no validity in what you're doing. But their body language was usually shaking, like the paper would be rattling. Or the judge wouldn't come in the room. And so they'd have to, move it to another court, and then that judge would come in. Yeah, there's no validity to what you're doing. Oh, really? Then why didn't your buddy, who has already been on the case, why isn't he hearing this? So this is my experience. So you understand where I'm coming from. I'm not just a guy in a suit standing on a stage. So that's why I'm giving you that background. Okay. So what I found was that everything is in commerce and everything is contract. Everything is by agreement. So there's 4 elements of a contract. This is all through my research. So this is a simple contract. Contracts can get very complex, but these are the essential elements that make a contract work. First thing, there has to be an offer. So they've disguised offers. So an offer is like, normally, I want to sell you something, do you want to buy it? And going back to old Lex Mercatoria, in the merchant fairs, that's where international trade started. So an offer can be disguised as, we're going to put a smart meter on your house. And they send it by notice. So notices, you can do an offer by notice, but it is an offer. It's an offer to contract. 5G is an offer. Forced vaccinations is an offer. Voting is an offer. Believing that there is a thing called the government is an offer. just like I told you to stand up. So part of the what has to happen next is there has to be minds. So the meeting of the minds is where you negotiate all the terms of the contract. There has to be an actual agreement, like you have to have full disclosure. So you can't, say that you want to buy my car and I don't tell you that the transmission doesn't work. Otherwise, the contract is immediately invalid. So you have to have a meeting of the minds. So what they tell you is that your smart meter is going to give you, or 5G is going to give you faster speed on your phone. And do you agree? Then there has to be an unconditional acceptance. So there has to be an agreement. Now, part of ancient commerce is there's a thing called tacit agreement. If you didn't say no, you've said yes. And I know it sounds really odd, but that's how it works. And so what's happened to most of us is we have tacitly agreed that there is a thing called the United States of America, Canada, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The world didn't come with countries. The countries are actually a fabrication. This is where you have to kind of go a little deeper. Who said there are countries? We have a bird called the Canada goose. It flies south in the winter and it flies back north in the summer. It does not check in at a border. It doesn't even know the border's there. But I'll tell you this, you try and take a goose, dead or alive, in your car across the border, you're going to have armed guards saying you can't do that. Why? Because they said stand up. Or they said sit down. So that's the acceptance. And then you have to have consideration or performance. So you have to have this background in order to understand what's happening. And you have to kind of superimpose this over what's really going on in the world. So what's happening is they are doing military agendas, but they're doing them commercially. You'll notice, even the last thing, it was about a company called Monsanto. It's a commercial entity. It's for profit. The 5G is being put up by things like Verizon and Sprint and et cetera, all commercial. Military in scope, commercial in fact. So you can't deal with them in a military way, you have to deal with them in a commercial way, and this is how they are operating, right here. They're offering and they're using tacit agreement in order to get in a contract to deploy military grade infrastructure. Same thing with the vaccines. So with that in mind, I want to show you something about how the structure works, and that it's about jurisdictions. And so you've heard a lot of talk, or you have ideas about how things are, but I want to show you that what you may think reality is may not be. Might have to go deeper. So on that statement, you will know the truth and it will set you free. In my opinion, the key word is you. Because what kind of truth could there possibly be that sets you free? Because I can give you truth about 5G, or I can give you truth about vaccinations, or I can give you truth about all kinds of things, but did they set you free? It's the truth. So there has to be some kind of deep, profound truth that would set us free. And it has to do with you. And that guy is really close. So I will show you the jurisdictions. There's you. Now, you can be plural, or you can be singular. And the statement doesn't say which it is, like that you will be free, like you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. So you have to understand that. And when I demonstrated the stand-up thing, some of you were operating, as I said, because you saw other people doing it. And there is a group mind in this room, and it can't be undone. It just is that way. So those that understand that can put something into the group mind, and the group mind just does what, without thinking about it. That's why I wanted you to think about, why did you stand up? What was the mechanism? Each one of you had a different one. So you is what we have to figure out. That's where the truth is. And you are an American, I'll just leave it at that. And you want to get a job. And you want to work at Walmart. So you go to the manager, and the manager says, I'll pay you X amount of dollars per hour, and you come here and you do tasks as so then there's an agreement. That's going back to that contract thing. So there's an agreement. You show up for hours, he gives you what's called money. And so you have to listen to the manager until he goes against what's called the Walmart store. So if he tells you to do something that's outside of the policies of the Walmart store, he's out of jurisdiction. You could up the jurisdiction and tell the Walmart store that one of the managers is doing something away from the policies of Walmart. The Walmart is in Hartford. That's another jurisdiction. It's a corporation. It operates as a city. And you have to understand that you are agreeing with each one of these concentric jurisdictions. So you have an agreement with Walmart, and you have an agreement with Hartford. Whether you understand it or not, it's by tacit agreement. Hartford's inside what's called Connecticut. That's a corporation. And it rules Hartford. Hartford rules Walmart. So if Hartford has a bylaw where Walmart can't be open on a Sunday, Walmart can't be open on a Sunday. So do you understand the jurisdictions? The one that's higher dictates what happens below. And at the center is you. So you have an agreement with Connecticut too if you live here. Outside that is the United States of America. It's a corporation. In other words, it has to have your agreement. It has to have a contract with you. And what I will tell you is your what you call an SSN number, in Canada it's an SIN number, that is your merchant number. Because you try and get a job at Walmart without that, won't happen. You try and get a driver's license without it, won't happen. You try and do anything in commerce, it won't happen. That is your merchant number. So they've turned you into a merchant. Therefore, merchant laws apply. So you got to understand that. Outside of this particular jurisdiction is the Republic. And here's where things change, because that's not a corporation. But what they trick you into believing is that the United States of America, the one just below that, is the real United States. And they get you to agree by voting. You know, there's a saying: if you don't vote, you can't complain. That's actually backwards. I don't vote, and I have the right to complain because I didn't vote. I didn't participate. I know this is going to be tough for some of you. So the Republic is still in effect. And there's a lot of people who think it isn't because they try and take the Constitution into the United States of America, the corporation, and say that it applies. But if you took it to your Walmart boss and said, yeah, Sunday, I have the right to pursue the pursuit of happiness, and I think I'll be happier at the beach rather than coming to work, he will look at you like, what are you talking about? So that's what happens in the court when people bring the Constitution in. The judge looks at you and goes, what are you talking about? And people get confused as to why, but I'll tell that's why. It doesn't apply in there. It doesn't apply in Walmart. It doesn't apply in any corporation because that is an agreement, it's a contract. So outside of the United States of America is the common law. So the common law actually comes from England and is the foundational law here. But here's something that most people don't know, particularly lawyers, is that the law merchant, an ancient commercial system, was fused into the common law in the 1700s. And then they just stopped talking about it. But the judges were told to take judicial notice of the law merchant. And most people don't even know that it exists, let alone that it's still in operation. When I found this out, then everything started to make sense. Now I know I was losing because I wasn't playing the proper game by the proper rules. And then once I did start, that's when my life started to change. I went from running to they were running from me. And they tried hard to get me back in the box. They even put me, they locked me up for 60 days without bail, pending a one-day hearing. It took them 60 days to get through a one-day hearing because I kept catching them on all their stuff and using commerce, and they just couldn't get around it. They couldn't get on top of it. Once you're up above in an above jurisdiction, the lower jurisdiction cannot get on top of it. This is a concept you have to understand no matter what you do. I'm not saying you have to do what we're doing, but you have to understand what's really going on here. This is how they are operating, and it's ancient. It goes back to the days of Hammurabi, where they have banking on clay tablets, etc. Like, people just don't know this. This has been going on longer than people know. They think it's fairly modern. It's not. This is very ancient, and there are certain rules and customs. And what I also found was that these rules and customs were very similar to biblical principles. I had a pretty good Bible knowledge, and everything I learned in commerce seemed to mirror something out of the Bible. So one of them was copying the other. And I don't know which is which, it doesn't really matter. The fact is, there are certain procedures and concepts that you have to operate in order for things to work in your favor. If you don't, you lose. That's it. It's just that simple. So with that said, one of the things, like I said, in a contract, you have to have full disclosure. You have to have a meeting of the minds. Now, this is the key to what's happening with 5G and all these dastardly things that they're doing, is they're not giving full disclosure. The fact that you are a US citizen, you did not get full disclosure. The fact that you took a driver's license, you were not given full disclosure. Therefore, the contract is null and void ab initio, which means right from the beginning. But you have to exercise that. Otherwise, you're tacitly going along with it, which means tacit agreement. And tacit agreement is a killer because you don't even know that you're doing it by your behavior. And part of the thing was performance at the end, either consideration, money paying, or performance ratifies a contract. So by your performance, you are in a contract. So the law merchant is something that you need to understand. You need to do a little bit of research on it. There's a lot of information out there that it's a myth. But you have to understand that it is not. There are actual scrolls of this, and you need to operate in that, at least that arena. After that, we get into spiritual realms, and that's where the remedy starts to really change for you. You get into these realms, and there's nothing that anything below that can do. And what I found was the Bible itself is a contract, and it's you can see the evidence of it because they take oaths on it. So your president took an oath on the Bible, all the past presidents, the Queen. Therefore, it is a contract, and I behoove you to read the contract because it will give you the remedy, and you can use it to your advantage, especially when they're in breach of contract. And now we're going to do a quick demonstration, just so you understand a little bit about the Bible. Who here does not have an opinion of the Bible? One. Who here does not have an opinion of the Dallas Cowboys? Who here does not have an opinion about the New York Yankees? Okay, how many have read the Bible? Pretty good. So those that have an opinion about the Bible that read it, that's your own opinion. Those that have an opinion about the Bible that didn't read it, it's not your own opinion. You got it from somewhere else. You have to understand that. You have to be honest with yourself and realize that something has been programmed into you. And you'll find that this has happened a lot. So just be honest with yourself. Self-analyze, like in the stand-up thing. Like, why am I doing this? Do I have to obey? Is there real authority there? What's the mechanism? So as these jurisdictions go out, they're actually infinite. So we're getting a little esoteric here. And then you have to start to ask yourself, who could be the judge of something that is infinite as far as jurisdictions? Now you're into the concept of God, however you understand God to be. But what I'll tell you, what the Bible says about God is He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Infinite. Infinity is like this. The beginning is the end. A toroid is this. So the outside of this is where God is, but He's also at the beginning. And where's the beginning of this? You. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you.